Welcome to our second monthly growth hour webinar from Shed Advisor. My name is Audrey Smith, and I will serve as your moderator for today. If you have any comments or questions throughout this webinar, please feel free to enter them in the Q&A chat box, or if you're calling in by phone, please feel free to text 540-416-2280. Again, that's 540-416-2280. That comes to me. I'll be able to field your questions, but we will have a Q&A section at the end of the webinar. So if you'd simply like to unmute and ask us directly, that works as well. Now, let me introduce you to our host today. Steve Byler has spent the core of his career in the world of sheds, first with the family business and more recently as part of Ulrich Lifestyle. From building to delivery, from sales to management to rent to own, he has worked in all facets of the business. While still in the industry, today his focus is on training, coaching, and equipping leaders in business and nonprofit organizations. He's passionate about seeing leaders grow and lead healthy lives because as goes the leaders, so goes the organizations they lead. He currently serves as chair of the National Shed Association, is a regular columnist in the Shed Business Journal, a certified speaker and coach with Maxwell Leadership, and professional EOS implementer. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you so much, Audrey. And to all our guests, delighted to have you here today for this second Growth Hour webinar. Our theme today, our topic for discussion is getting intentional. I know there are a lot of things in life that we do get intentional about. Other things we just kind of allow to happen to us and feel like we're sometimes caught on a wave riding a surfboard that's completely outside of our control. And the challenge is, how do we respond to life that comes along well, but also be intentional, thoughtful, and would we say proactive in actually building an intentional life? So the focus of this Growth Hour webinar is really for leaders, whether you're in the shed industry or not, but there will be specific and very intentional aspects of this that focus on the shed industry specifically. We're starting out with fairly general topics, and this is a general topic today as well. And the idea of getting intentional, what I'm discovering as I work with more and more leadership teams is that many people first get intentional in the space of their business, and only later do they extrapolate that back onto their personal lives. But today we want to talk about it from a personal perspective. Specifically, how do I as a leader become intentional in building my own life, in taking responsibility for the life that's been entrusted to me in this time and this place? So we're going to be focusing on that, getting intentional. And in the future, I've got an interesting list of guests and hosts coming up that should bring some very specific value in very specific ways that I think you'll be very excited about. Also want to just note that while this webinar is live here today, gives you a chance to interact, ask questions, and I certainly welcome that. And if you're just joining, remind you that you can always enter your questions in the chat box if you're on Zoom. And if you're on a phone, feel free to send any questions you have by text message to 540-416-2280. If you need a piece of paper to write that down, certainly invite you to do that. 540-416-2280. We welcome your questions. Then going forward, I look forward to introducing some of these guests to you. And we're going to be talking about business valuations, for example. How do I know the value of my business? And why should I know the value of my business? We're going to be talking metrics. We're going to be talking advertising, marketing strategies, sales processes. What are the good measurables that we need inside our industry? And how do we grow as leaders? But today, I want to focus in on the personal life of the leader. Rather than paying attention specifically to just your business and learning about business at the expense of personal growth, I want to just flip that script a bit today and say, how do I actually go to work building a personal and intentional life? And how does my business play a part of that? And I've just called it the pathway to your future. And there's a visual I'm going to use here today that I hopefully, if you see it here in front of you today, if you're, on Zoom, I want this to kind of be embedded in your mind as you think about your life, as you think about the various institutions, businesses, organizations you might be involved in. But the pathway to your future is not just a given. You're an active participant in the pathway that you're on, and you get to shape it. You get to influence it. You don't get to determine it. You don't get to choose all aspects of it, but we can be very clear and intentional about building the life that we want to live, that we feel called to live within certain parameters. So I'm going to start talking about that today. And again, I just had the privilege of working with several companies overseas in the past couple of weeks. And I'll talk about this a bit later, probably, if I don't forget. That also included kind of a personal dream item for me, and was able to realize that dream in ways that honestly far exceeded my expectations. But I've discovered that so many people find the tools to build an intentional life when they actually face the hardships of business and realize that they have to take responsibility for the trajectory of their business, for the outcome of their business. They have to own the business activities to achieve reasonable goals. We call them SMART goals, goals that are specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. So how do I actually become that kind of person? Because if I become that kind of person, then I bring those skill sets to every set of relationships. I'm able to help my children build intentional lives. I'm able to help the nonprofits that I'm involved in become very intentional, strategic in the work that they're doing, as well as the business that each of us are involved in, whether it's the shed industry or not. So there is a pathway to your future. Some of it you have control over, some of it you don't. But the first step I'm going to suggest here today is that we must start by being very honest and very clear about our current reality. So what is your current reality? How can you describe it? Is it good? Where is it good? What needs improvement? What are the significant aspects that you can actually assess in your current life? It's a bit like taking inventory at the end of the year. Okay, and also just a little additional sidebar here. One of the reasons I chose this topic for today is we're quickly coming up on the end of the year. And often the beginning of the year, that January 1, this time 2025, a quarter of the first century of the third millennium already gone, that first day of the year feels like a bit of a fresh slate for us to begin to write the next chapter of our lives on. And often we kind of create some goals, we create some ideals for the coming year that very quickly fade off of our consciousness, very quickly fade off of our radar, and we fall back into the ruts that we've established over the course of our lives. And one of the important things is for us to really pay attention to our current reality. And I'm going to unpack this a little bit further, give you more detailed kind of tools to use in thinking about your current reality. But we have to be honest about where we are. It's difficult for us to get where we want to go if we cannot honestly assess where we are. Next, once we have been clear about our current reality and we get some clarity around that, we can then begin to think about our envisioned future. What would I actually like for my life to look like in the future? What would I want my business to look like in the future? What do I want my marriage to look like in the future, or my family, or the nonprofit that I'm involved in, or my community? What is that envisioned future? Now, interestingly enough, we're hardwired as human beings. Some of us are more attuned to the present reality and the past. Others of us are more in tune to the future. And some of us are naturally more pessimistic, some more optimistic. I was recently working with a leadership team, and every one of their measurables was painfully suffering behind their goals. And yet they were incredibly optimistic and hopeful about the future. And honestly, initially, I was distressed by their optimism, because I said, listen, you're not meeting your goals in any way, shape, or form. Are we being honest about where we are? And they began to describe to me the changes that have already taken place that give them hope that they're actually moving toward their envisioned future. So it's important for us to realize also who we are. Are we the optimists that are always smelling the roses of the future? Or are we the kind of negative Nancy's, the pessimists who are always saying, well, I can't get this done, I can't do that. And we have a negative view because of our past and our current reality. So both of these, if we want to be intentional about creating the pathway to our future, we have to be honest about our current reality, and we have to be clear about our envisioned future. And we're going to talk about the various aspects of this. Here's where we're going to spend most of our time around these two. But that envisioned future, the clearer it gets, the more likely you're able to achieve it. And Michael Hyatt notoriously has said that the dream has to be crystal clear. And once we see the dream, once we see that envisioned future, the strategy will eventually become clear. If we choose a strategy first, usually we cripple our ability to get to our envisioned future. So that envisioned future is just as important as an honest assessment of our current reality. Now, the other thing I've noticed is that some of us have stopped dreaming. And this often happens to people in midlife or a little later in life. Let's say at my stage of life, we become cynical. We've taken a few knocks. We've faced some disappointments. We've taken some losses. We've taken some wounds. And so we just kind of throw in the towel and decide we're going to coast to our graves. When in fact, for many of us, we have the best years of our lives ahead of us. I have a good friend who's a doctor, and on a trip we took together recently, he recommended a book to me that I decided I needed to pick up and read. And it's called Successful Aging. Now, my wife actually read more of the book than I did, and she's giving me tips about what she's learning from this book. But one of the things they noted in that book is that people who maintain fairly healthy lives, worked hard to maintain health, live purposeful lives, they said the best year of their life was 81 and 82 years of age. So to me, that gave me incredible hope. If I live intentionally and I live well, there is a lot of great life to be lived ahead of me. And how do I get there? This is part of our envisioned future. We can't see our lives just declining in the future. We have to see purpose and hope in that envisioned future. But as we get crystal clear about what that envisioned future is, the strategy, how we get from our current reality to where we're going, becomes far more clear. Now, there's another aspect of this journey then, and we're going to talk a little bit about this in a few moments, and that is our core values. Businesses often talk about their core values, but we as individuals each have a set of core values as well. And these core values are the kind of the guide rails or the railroad tracks of our decision-making process. We can't value everything equally. And the things that we do value finally trump our decision-making processes. So not only do we need to know our current reality, our envisioned future, we also need to be clear about what our personal values are and how they shape our decision-making process, how they got us to where we are, and how they will frame our pathway to the future. Now, our core values flow from something, that's equally deep inside of us, and that's our passion. What is it that we love? What are the things that we truly love? What makes our heart race? What do we really get passionate about? What really ignites you? And for the people who are more, historians, think more in the past than they dream in the future, a good question here might be, is when you linger on memories of the past because they have positive emotions attached to them, moments in which you felt fully alive, moments in when you felt like, I know why I'm on the planet. I know why I'm in this season of life. I know exactly why God brought me into this space at this time. What are those situations? And what were you doing? Where does that passion ignite? Our core values flow out of our passion. Our passion is kind of the core of who we are. And when our current reality becomes clear, our envisioned future gets to be crystal clear, we understand our core values and what we're really passionate about. then a few other things become far clearer, including the strategy for how I'm going to get from where I am to my envisioned future. Now, this all sounds very kind of theoretical at this stage, a lot of kind of dreamy, we might call it visionary talk, but we're going to get the boots down to the ground into our actual reality before we conclude our time here together today. But it's important for us to understand your current reality does not need to stay your current reality. There is an envisioned future, and I'd like to spark the passion within you that was given to you and help you discover the core values that will guide you toward that envisioned future that's deeply aligned to the purpose for which you are here today. Now, what becomes clear once these pieces are in place is a strategy. How do I get from current reality to my envisioned future? And for this one, sometimes we have to get help. Sometimes we have to say, what are the possible pathways? What strategies can I employ to get from where I am to where I'm going, to where I want to go? And if I'm in a bad situation at the moment, how do I have to change my strategy in order to get there? The strategy is kind of the high-level methodology that I'm engaging in life. Now, let me just pause here and say, we're going to talk personally. I will allude to business because there are deep parallels here. This is also true for businesses and nonprofits. We have to know our current reality, our envisioned future. We have to know what our core values are. What is our passion that we have brought? What caused us to start this? Why did we take up this job to start with? And by what strategy do we think we're moving forward? And only once the strategy is clear can we know the individual steps or tactics that we must undertake in order to get toward our envisioned future. Okay, so if you're on Zoom and you see this visual, this is the one I just want you to kind of implant in your mind. And again, if you're not and you'd like to see it, just drop us an email and be happy to get that emailed out to you if you're not able to join us here today, or you can watch it on YouTube in the future. Now, let's get clear about our current reality next. And this one can often be extremely painful. And I would venture to say that the majority of us are probably not where we thought we would be 5 years ago. 5 years ago, maybe we were optimistic about where we'd be in 5 years. We were optimistic about our future, but we find ourselves in some ways stuck in our current reality. And that current reality sometimes is painful or has some very difficult spaces in it. And we feel trapped, we feel caught, we feel like we're not making significant progress. So we really, first of all, have to get clear about where we actually are. That means you have to get clear about where you are, assess it honestly. And this requires a high level of self-awareness for ourselves personally, for our relationships, and for other things that are more objective. We can assess that if we're willing to pause and take a look at it. And I'm going to unpack this in about, I think it's 5 different areas that I want us to consider here today for our current reality. The first one is our health. Now, health, I use it in a broader category, not just in a physical category. And I think of health specifically in 4 dimensions of the self: the spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical. And I think it's helpful if we drop these down onto a list and just do an honest assessment. So how am I actually physically? What's my weight? What's my blood pressure? What are the health concerns I have? And what am I doing about them? So let's just talk about these 4 dimensions a bit in order, or in a specific order. The spiritual first. And spiritual, as a Christian, for me, my perspective and my spiritual health is tied to a purpose. And so no matter what your religious faith is, or quote, lack of religious faith, all of us are tied to some sort of purpose or higher cause. There's something that motivates us. There's something outside of us. And what is that? Because everything else hangs on this. We must nurture and care for this dimension of who we are. So our spiritual health has to be good. It has to be healthy. It has to be vibrant. And this has to do with, why am I here? Why am I breathing right now? What's my place in the world? How do I discover that? And how do I live into that sense of purpose? This higher cause, when it dies, when it becomes unhealthy, when we lose our way around the highest cause for which we exist, we slip very quickly into a meaningless, dull, and uneventful life. We have to be tied deeply to this sense of higher purpose, this higher cause. And when there's vibrancy spiritually in that relationship to that higher cause, that higher person, as it were, in the Christian faith, then we find purpose and a sense of order to the rest of our lives. And if that gets disordered, our lives tend to descend into chaos. So being crystal clear, being spiritually healthy, spirit simply says we are spiritual. There's more to us than just the physical. There's more to us than just the mental and emotional. There is a spiritual dimension that allows us to imagine and dream and think larger and be connected to something outside of ourselves. And we must attend to that to be sure that that's a healthy space. If we're not in a healthy space there, then there are things we can actually do to our current reality to get that into a healthier place. We must nurture and care for this dimension. The second dimension we'll talk about here is the mental health. And there's a lot in the media today about mental health. And many, many people are struggling with mental health in ways that are almost unprecedented. Part of it is just the social disintegration that we have and around social media rather than good, healthy human relationships and healthy habits. Technology is causing us fresh challenges. We're not dealing so well with it. But one of the quick tests here is, in our mental health, are we thinking clearly? When I go to work, when I sit down at dinner with my family and my family's around the table, am I healthy? Am I crystal clear in my thinking? Am I in, as they used to say in Ireland, am I in top form? Or do I find myself foggy in thinking? Do I find anxiety dragging down my mental capacity? Do I feel overloaded? All those sorts of things bring a mental stress and strain. And we have to be honest about our current reality regarding our mental health. And let's be honest, until we're willing to say, I think I've got a problem here. I think I'm unhealthy here. We're not actually going to do anything about it. So we have to get real. We have to get clear about our current health, our mental health. And the third dimension is emotional health. And this is kind of our emotional side, our felt reality. And one of the important tests here is, do you have the emotional elasticity or the emotional capacity, the emotional reserve, so that you don't snap quickly? You react appropriately to challenging circumstances? Or do you find yourself reacting inappropriately and frequently needing to apologize because you're just fraught, or you're frail, or you're worn out emotionally, and you don't have that emotional capacity to be resilient in the face of challenging circumstances? And I would just note here that as a leader in both nonprofit or in nonprofits, church, and business, that some of my biggest regrets in leadership come in this specific area, not being aware emotionally and then responding emotionally in a difficult conversation in a way that has inflicted unnecessary damage to a relationship or to another person. And those are hard to recover from because we as leaders are in positions of authority, in positions of responsibility, and our emotional venting, our emotional responses are felt deeply by those in our care. And if we're not emotionally healthy, we're often leaving damage to people around us. And sometimes that's to the people we love most deeply. So be honest. Get crystal clear about how you're doing. What's your current reality in your emotional health? Do you have the reservoir to respond kindly in wisdom, or are you reacting emotionally and bringing damage to relationships with people that you care about deeply, whether they're direct reports in business, family members, friends, etc.? And then the fourth health dimension is the physical dimension. And this is the one we know best because, hey, it's just who we are. It's who we see in the mirror. It's who we encounter on the scales. It's who the doctor primarily talks about when we sit down, in his office. This physical dimension is also very challenging. And these are not just clean, separate categories. They actually are deeply intersected. And so one impacts the other. And our physical health impacts our spiritual, mental, and emotional health. So we need to be attentive to our physical health. And we need to be honest about our current reality. So what is my weight? What should my weight be? Am I resting well? Do I sleep enough? Am I getting enough exercise? Is my cholesterol too high? What am I doing about it? Do I just say, well, it is what it is? Or do I take some ownership and responsibility for it? I've had a couple of wake-up calls on this front, and one just recently. I had been doing pretty well for a couple of years, getting to the gym, getting physical exercise, watching my calorie intake. I'd lost some weight, was feeling much better. And then through travel schedule and kind of a change in lifestyle, things got away from me again. And I went back to see my doctor here just a couple of weeks ago. And he just looked me straight in the eyes. He looked over my blood test results and looked at my charts and said, Steve, you're going to go on medication or you have to change your lifestyle significantly. You've got to get exercise. You've got to lose some weight. You've got to watch your caloric intake. You've got to watch the diet, and you've got to be sure you drink plenty of water. So the physical, really does come down to four basic things. Am I drinking plenty of water? What is my diet like? Does my diet actually bring me the nutrition I need? And then, am I resting adequately? And am I moving enough? Am I getting enough exercise? So it was a stern conversation, and enough so that I said, yes, I need to wake up and rehabituate or bring back to habit again some of the practices I need to build a healthy life. Now, I haven't told the doctor this, but what I actually did is took his photo and put it on my phone as a wallpaper. So every time I pick up my phone, I see Dr. Hill looking straight at me, and I'm thinking, yes, doc, I made an appointment with you again 6 months from now, and I'm going to have to go through this conversation again, and I'm committed to being in a different place. And that reminder triggers the activities that I need to undertake to see to my physical health. So we have to start being honest about where we are in our health. That's just the first dimension. The others hopefully will move a little more quickly. So where are you in your health? Next, where are you? Where are you really in your energy levels? Energy has to do with resilience. And the older you get, the scarcer this commodity is. And we can't just waste it. We have to be sure that we have the energy to do the most significant, the most important things that we have in life. And we need to be sure that we have reserves for those moments. So this means if I spend all my energy at work, and then I'm on the way home, and I walk in every time I get home to my wife, to my family, or to hang out with my friends, I'm always spent with no energy for those significant relationships. There's a significant price I'm paying. I'm letting go of a lot of the life I really want, especially in the future, by the current reality that I never have energy for these most important relationships in my life. So we must learn to protect, manage, and have enough energy in reserve for those kind of things that happen to us, those situations that show up that are demanding for us. We have to have reserve for those. So what is your current reality around your energy? Do you have energy? Are you investing the energy in the spaces that matter most to you? It's important to be really honest about this and get a clear assessment. And I'm going to suggest this later, but be thoughtful about this. Jot these things down and write a little description of beside each one of these. Where am I actually? Be clear about your current reality. Okay. The next one are my relationships. We all have relationships that are more significant to us, more important to us, more primary to us, and relationships that will be with us for a lifetime. And these are marriage relationships, the relationships to family. You know, whatever happens to life, you're always family. How are you reacting, responding, investing in those relationships? How are you doing? What would the people closest to you in your life say about their relationship with you? And do you have the energy and the health in those relationships? Now, we can take responsibility for those. There are things we can do. Obviously, relationships are a bit more complicated because it requires two-way participation. But be honest about the current reality. To ignore it, to deny the current reality, and especially the painful, difficult aspects of it, really are a disservice to us in helping us to truly build the life we want in the future. How are you doing? What would people close to you say? And the next one I want you to think about is your finances. So this is one of the key resources in life. It's one of those things that facilitates food, shelter, clothing, transportation, and also allows us some of the little extra fun things that we'd like to do in life, allows us to give to places that we care deeply about, to contribute to other people's needs. And it can be a cause of incredible stress and anxiety in our lives, or it can be a foundation of freedom. So to know where we are with finances. And I personally found that it's not enough just to know I'm in financial pain or I'm in financial freedom. We need to know some key details. We need to know kind of our personal balance sheet. We need to know our current cash flow. Are we making ends meet or are we not? Are we going backwards or are we going forwards? And then also, what does finishing well financially look like? And how am I on track to do that? And what do I need to change to get on track to do that? There is so much of stress in our lives that comes around money, even relational stress, that to get crystal clear on where we are, share that plan with those around us, and then mutually commit to working a plan to get us where we want to go. We have to be clear about our current reality. And I found that during some of the most financially stressful times of my life, the last thing I wanted to do was look at how much money I had, what my debts were, what my cash flow was, to actually look at the data, because I just knew it was bad. The most important thing I had to do in those times was to look at the data, face the current reality, and be honest about where things are. Define it, describe it, share it with the people around me. Here's where I am, and I don't like it. What am I going to do to change it? We have to get crystal clear about where we are in our finances. And then the last one, in some ways, in a little different category, but it is the single most formative part of who you are and who you are becoming. And that's the space of your habits. Your habits are building your future currently. So if you have bad habits, they're building a future that you don't welcome. If you have good habits, they are incrementally increasing and moving you toward the person that you want to become in the future, the life you want to have in the future, the vocation you wish to have in the future. Your daily little habits are one of the most formative parts of who you are becoming. So they're either helping you become the person of your future dreams, or they're impeding you from becoming, hindering you from becoming the person you want to become. And the ancient Greek philosopher Aristotle said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And when you talk to people who have learned the power of habits, learn to embrace positive habits. So what does consistently getting enough rest, consistently nurturing your mental health, consistently watching your diet, your regular intake, consistently getting some exercise every day. Those are the things that impact your health long term. Consistently reading even a little bit nurtures your continual growth and development. The habits that shape you are the habits who are creating your future. This also says, what are our current habits? But then we'll look at what do we need to habituate going forward in order to become the people of our dreams. Again, so all this is really about get clear about where you are. Don't ignore it. Look at it straight in the face. Assess it. Write it down. Get it in ink. Assess your current reality. And I find this, for me personally, the most difficult part of really building this pathway forward. And then what I love to do, and again, some people find it more difficult, is then to begin to dream about where you want to go. And this is about your envisioned future. This is just as important as assessing where you currently are. And you need to be just as crystal clear about your envisioned future as you are about your current reality. Because the more clearly you see your dream, the more clearly you see your envisioned future, with greater specificity, the more clearly you'll identify your purpose, and more clearly you'll chart your pathway over the course of a lifetime. And there's a sense in which this is discovered. There's a sense in which some of it you've had from a child, some of it gets reset in midlife, but you're always discovering it, reshaping it, and revisioning this envisioned future. This is not a waste of time and a waste of energy. It's actually a very critical part of being a thoughtful, well-intentioned person living out their purpose, cause, and passion in the world. And we're going to look at, again, 5 spaces that it's important to kind of think through our envisioned future. Now, we've often heard the line, you can be anything you want to be. There was a book published, I think, maybe 20, 30 years ago that just took that title and upended it and said, you can't be anything you want to be. And it's important for us to realize our limitations as humans, but also our limitations based on our individuality. Pardon me, our time in life, our physical makeup, our social connections. Me, for example, there is nothing I could do to actually become a world-class NBA basketball player. It's just not going to happen. I'm not that athletic sort. I haven't been given those genetic structures. So it's just not going to happen. I could try as much as I want. I could get better than I am at basketball, but I'll never be a star. Not going to happen. So what do we dream about, and how do we now create clarity about our envisioned future? And I'll think about 5 categories here. So the first one is your talents. We have to be clear about the talents that we have, and our envisioned future must be rooted in our talents, in our unique abilities, in our calling, as it were. When we get clear about what we're really good at, what the things are that we've been given that just naturally come to us, that are part of who we are in our makeup, and we invest in our talents and the areas of our talents, it activates what some call the law of least effort. You get the least effort. You put in the least effort around your talents to get your greatest return. There are 2 kinds of talent, and they're man-made talents, the things that we work hard to succeed in and excel in. And then there are the God-given talents, the talents that you were simply born with. And we need to know how to take our God-given talents and invest those. And Pearl Bailey has said, with man-made talent, you have to work very hard. With God-given talent, you just touch it up once in a while. Okay, and I love that. What are you really good at? And how can you touch it up? How can you fine-tune it? How can you polish it so that it just becomes better and better? That's actually taking what's been given to you and investing it well. So be thoughtful about what your talents are. And again, this requires honest candor. And be sure that your envisioned future takes your talents into consideration. Okay, and then also be thoughtful about your purpose. What is it that really gets you excited? What do you remember about moments in which you felt most fully alive? Be sure that your envisioned future flows from your sense of purpose. When I work with leadership teams and we go for the core of their purpose, why did they start this business? Why do they keep going when things get hard? What's the passionate core that they bring to this specific business? Usually has nothing to do with the business itself, but it's something core to who they are, and they could exercise this purpose or passion in many different places, but it's important to identify it. And I kind of get a sense in the room when we discover it and they actually put language to it, or when we're not quite there yet. When we're not quite there again, you get this kind of like, yeah, I think that's it. When you find it, discover it, and put it in language on the table, and you nailed it, you often see even senior executives get a little misty-eyed because they're at the very center of their sense of purpose has been identified, and their passion lies there, and it really gets you excited. It keeps you going when stuff gets hard. Be sure that your envisioned future flows from that sense of purpose. And then know what your strengths are, and correspondingly know what your weaknesses are. But your envisioned future should be based on your strengths, not on your weaknesses. It's tied to talents, but also has aspects of personality associated with it. Am I collaborative, or am I a rather autonomous person? That deeply shapes your envisioned future. Am I socially introverted or socially extroverted? That should influence what your envisioned future looks like. Greer Garson has said, starting out to make money is the greatest mistake in life. Do what you feel you have a flair for doing. And if you're good enough at it, the money will come. Because money is not a high enough purpose. We actually have to use our talents, find our purpose, work within our strengths. And that's actually where we bring the greatest value to the world. That's actually where our envisioned future begins to shine and flourish, whether as individuals, as leaders, or in our companies and nonprofits. And then, what are the skills that we have developed? This is the polishing work. And some of us grew up in families that emphasize certain skill sets. And so we got our 10,000 hours of practice in by the time we were teenagers in that set of skills. And those can go a long ways towards shaping and influencing our envisioned future. But ask the question, not only what are your talents, your strengths, and your purpose, but what are you really good at? What are the skills that you have developed? If you're in the top 50% in that skill set, the likelihood that it will impact deeply your envisioned future just gets much higher, or the 20%, or even if you're in the top 10%. That will allow you to keep polishing that skill until you become more and more in demand around those skill sets. And John Maxwell, one of the lines, if you've heard him speak much, that he uses over and over is, you've got to figure out how to get out of the people pile. You get lost in the pile of people, and it's by polishing your talents, developing your skills, putting in the reps, getting really, really good at what you do, that you begin to get out of the people pile, and your opportunities begin to show up, which leads us to the next one, simply opportunities. Opportunities, it takes time to find the opportunities that utilize our talents, our strengths, our skills, and our purpose. Most of us have a few opportunities show up very early in life. We discover this, and it gives us a shift on the journey of life. Who you are, the skills you develop, the passions you have will open doors for you. But as you cultivate those, larger doors await for people who hone their skills and polish them to a higher level. So what is that envisioned future? How far do you want to go? Where do you want to go? What is your dream? Don't waste time polishing a bottom 10% of talent or something you're truly not passionate about, but get clear about that envisioned future. Now, I want to note something here. A lot of the young generation, and have tremendous respect for many of these millennials and younger who are in the workplace, one of the passions that they have is they really want to find meaningful work. We must, however, learn to work with what is directly in front of us first. We have to engage in the opportunities and the resources that are within the scope of our control presently in front of us. And as we improve our skill sets, we develop our strengths, we find things we love and are passionate about. And so this journey of discovery around our talents, skills, purpose, opportunities, and strengths is often a journey of a lifetime. And it starts becoming clear in our late 30s, clearer in 40s, and hopefully by the time we're in our 50s, we're abundantly clear where our niche and what our contribution really is and how to live into that space. in the opportunities that are in front of us. We've got to do the hard work of discovering what this is. We're going to eliminate some along the way. We're going to find joy in something that surprises us, and we'll invest more in that space and find that our contribution is growing. What I would just say is it's hard work, but do dream. Spend some time, commit some time to this envisioned future, to thinking about it, to dreaming about what might be ahead of you in the future. Don't be afraid of it, because the more clearly you envision that future, whether it's personally, for your marriage, for your family, for your business, the more likely you're able to achieve that. And you're a created being who has been given some of these abilities, and you have been given dreams. They're born into you. Nurture them. Do dream. For most people, the limitations they face are not on the outside. They're on the inside. They're in your own head. They're in your own anxiety and your lack of commitment to the journey. Just a warning on the other side, though, is when people's talent does not match their dreams and they fail to recognize it, they will be forever working, but never winning. It's a bit like me if I dreamed of being a basketball star. I'll work forever. I could be on the basketball court day after day after day, and I'll get better, but I'll never be in the top 10%. So I'll never win. I'll never really be a winning basketball player. Our talent must match the dreams that we dream. So dream about where you want to go. It's rooted in your talents, your unique abilities. It takes time to find this. It takes time to discover it. Work with what's in front of you, deploy the opportunities, the resources that are within the scope of your control. But take time to dream. And I want to just note here, this takes time. Take a walk, take a notepad, start dreaming, allow yourself to dream. Get out of the rut of I am where I am and I'll always be here. Begin to dream of something different. What is it that you're made for? Where might you go? Only then can you discover how you might actually get there. Now, just a quick note around core values yet. These are core to who you are. They're central and primary values that shape your decisions. And we need to be cognizant of what our core values are. We don't need to blast them out for everybody else to know, but we actually have them. And when we're making decisions, these values shape why we choose this instead of this or that instead of that. And we need to be, the clearer we are about our core values, the more easily we get our sense of purpose and our skill sets aligned around those core values to build an intentional future. And we want to also just note that these core values, sometimes we get stuck in what we call aspirational values. I wish I was this. It's what you'd like to be, kind of wishful thinking. You're not. And so aspirational values, there's a place for them, but that's not core values. Neither are they accidental. Sometimes we have a certain set of values that are held for a season of life, but they're not core to who you are. They become a bit of an accountability framework that's rather than a central core of who you authentically are. Or there are permission to play values that just simply say, everybody should hold these values. If not, you're a crook or a villain. So just eliminate those things. Discover what your values truly are and how do they play into your pathway towards your envisioned future. And again, here is the visual I want to just leave with you. Be clear about your current reality. Dream about your envisioned future. Where do your passions lie, your core values? What's the strategy by which you'll get there? And what are the next steps that you'll take? Now what? So what? We need to wrap this up. And I want to leave it down with these 3 lines. Take time, even if you need to get away, take a walk, go to a coffee shop for an hour, and be honest about where you are. Assess where you are, at least the 4 dimensions and the key relationships you have in your life. And be candidly honest about where you actually are in each of those spaces. The next step can be a little harder. Dream about your future. It can be very difficult for some. We've given up dreaming. We've given up hope. especially if you're caught in the tyranny of the urgent and life just feels like a treadmill and the treadmill keeps going and you're either going to fall down running or you're going to have a crash of some sort. You have to step off to dream again about the future. Have the courage to dream again. And you have to write this down personally in the key areas of your life, then in business. And I would suggest if you get stuck on this one, an exercise that I've had people do in my coaching work is take a piece of paper and commit to putting down 100 things that you dream about. 100 things. 10 is too easy. You just jot a couple things down, but you don't get to the very heart of where your dreams have gone to die. Committing to 100, it may take you a month working on it off and on. But if you commit to writing down 100 things, you're going to find your dreams deeply inside that bucket list. And it becomes meaningful. And you'll start picking out meaningful steps to take to move toward your envisioned future. And then you have to decide what the first step is. And you've got to commit to that first step. You've got to do the hard work. The dream is free, but the journey is not. You must take simple, repeatable, habituated steps toward your envisioned future. But it will set you free, and you'll move to the life that you've only dreamed of to this point, whether it's in your marriage, your family, your friendships, or in the space of your business. Do the hard work. As you nail those things down and get clarity on honesty about where you are, clear about where you're going, the strategy, how you get there, the tactics, what the steps are, become more clear as you begin that journey. Thank you so much for your time. And we're just going to open it. I thought this was going to be short, obviously very close to a passion of mine. So I rambled on a bit more than I expected, but a few moments for questions. Anybody have any questions you'd like to submit here as we wrap up?
Feel free to unmute yourself if you're on the phone.
Yeah, Steve, I have a question. Can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear.
Yeah, remind me again how we relate with our personal life, mission, core values versus as they're applied to business. Sometimes I find myself, I'm spending most of my time in business and I have my set of core values there. Remind me again of the interface between those two sets, or should we just have one that's broad enough to apply to both?
So thanks for the question. I find that most people first create their core values in a business context and then only later ask where the personal ones actually come in. I really think you need to be clear on two separate sets of core values. Hopefully there's a close relationship or a deep correlation, but often the things that shape us personally and in our personal relationships have some correlation to the business values that we embrace, especially if we're the ones creating those. And the more alignment we have, the easier the continuity between personal life and business. But there's also enough relationship or margin kind of between the two that there can be a bit of disconnect, but there has to be enough similarity or we start losing energy at work and fail to contribute and be fully engaged there.
You'd have any resources you could point me to like some kind of a workbook or some kind of an exercise to go through for the personal core values? I'd sure appreciate that.
Okay. I've coached many people through this. Drop me an email and I'll send you what I have, which is a list and a bit of a process. Be happy to do that. So steve@sjbyler.com and we'll get those out to you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
We did have some submitted here. How do you align your envisioned future with any partners, whether that be business or personal?
Okay, excellent question. When you're in partnership, sometimes the envisioned future takes you out of the partnership because there's just not enough correlation between partners. And so this is where you have to be clear about what your personal values are, what your personal passion is. Often the scope of it can be larger if you can flourish and find that space inside a network of partnerships. But if it diverges too far and you cannot authentically show up in work, sometimes that means you have to part ways in work partnerships and other relationships. So that is a really challenging question. And it's one that, again, I would say once your envisioned future becomes clear, the strategy and the tactics that it'll take to achieve it become more clear. Sometimes we choose the end and don't get to choose the pathway.
That's great, Steve. Thanks. If no one else has any other questions, we've got 3 minutes left. I have one more question for you, Steve. But I want to let anyone else on the phone chime in here if they have any questions.
Hear me? This is Mose.
Oh, hi, Mose.
Hi. Hi, Steve.
Hello,
Can you hear me?
Mose. Yes, I can.
Could you email that same set of things you have for Eugene there?
Okay, yes.
I'll
So
drop an email.
just take Steve at SJ Byler, drop us an email, and we'll get those out to you.
Okay, thank you.
And anybody feel free to do that. She just put it in chat as well. Again, the email is Steve, STEVE, at sjbyler, BYLER.com. And we'll be happy to get those out to you. It's somewhat raw, but I have used it quite frequently, actually, and hopefully you can find it helpful. Okay, thank you so much for joining us, and we're going to conclude with that here today, and welcome your continued input, interaction, and look forward to seeing you. Our next one is Thursday, December 16, 2024, followed by Wednesday, January 15, both at 12 noon Eastern Time. Thank you very much, and a very happy Thanksgiving to all of you.
Thanks, everyone.